as they say, it's the hope that kills you. And there were some very, very different emotions in the build-up to the Liverpool game. I say the build-up, I mean the 2 or 3 days before. I think there was a genuine hope, maybe not an expectancy, but a genuine hope and a genuine belief that we could get a result against Liverpool. I think that was only heightened when we saw the Liverpool team sheet come up with no Mane, obviously no recognised defence in there, no Firmino. It looks like a really good time to play them. And I think while some of us, many of us hoped for victory, a lot of us would have absolutely taken a draw. I think even a defeat with us playing in the same manner that we normally play in, again, would have been acceptable. There were some, because I obviously got comments on this channel, but there weren't too many who predicted that we would get humiliated by Liverpool. And we did, by the way. And I think that's almost understandable in any other season, but I think because we've allowed ourselves to hope and allowed ourselves to dream in this one, it felt like a dagger to the heart. It feels a bit weird, actually, but having suffered lots and lots of defeats to Liverpool and all the other big clubs over the years, this one almost felt worse because I'd allowed myself to hope and I'd allowed myself to dream. And that doesn't mean we can't hope, we can't dream. That doesn't mean that it's all over now and that we'll slide down the league and finish 12th. I don't think that's the case. Are we a team that's the lower levels? No. Are we contenders for the league title? No. The truth, as ever, is probably somewhere in the middle. But I think what made this one really hard to get my head around was a lack of ambition. Because the very evidence that we used to be hopeful for this fixture, the very evidence that we'd seen before our eyes of being on a run of victories, of being undefeated, of not conceding many goals, that evidence that we used to hope and dream, I felt should have been the same evidence that the team used to have a go at Liverpool. Particularly when they were, as I said, a wounded animal. They were at their weakest that they've been for some time. But we didn't. We didn't seem to go in with any sort of ambition to win the game whatsoever. I'm not saying there was no game plan. There was a game plan. Clearly, David Moyes wanted to keep it tight and hopefully, I guess, win 1-0, hit him on a counter-attack or something like that. There was no real counter-attack, let's be perfectly honest here. When Antonio plays well, West Ham play well. I find that to be the case. Antonio did not play well yesterday at all. And as a result, and it's not the only reason, we lost the game. But I do feel that when we were into the game, when David Moyes had perhaps ascertained that Jurgen Klopp had been a bit tricksy and changed his formation slightly, I thought maybe we would change it. The fact that we hadn't would show that we didn't have the ambition to go on and win the game in a sort of swashbuckling style. Maybe foolishly, I'd led myself to believe that we could go there with the sort of attacking intent that we've gone against Crystal Palace. Yes, I know, Liverpool are not Crystal Palace. But I felt we could almost go there and do wave after wave of attack. I wanted to see Nat Phillips, their inexperienced central defender, who played very well, by the way. I wanted to see him isolated. I want to see players going up against him, putting him under pressure. And I think it's a real shame that we come away from that game having never really tested him. There were a couple of times where he was required to head the ball out, but in the main, he wasn't really tested. I felt it was a shame that we never really tried to exploit fully the fact that Jordan Henderson was playing at centre-half. Again, we didn't test him. We didn't put him under pressure. Did he look okay and did he look comfortable? Both Henderson and Phillips, yes, they did. But that's easier, isn't it, when you're not being put under pressure at all? And what it led me to think of a few things, really. And firstly is something we've been discussing for a little while now. Since we knew that Jesse Lingard was signing for the club. And it's that old cliche, that old adage of there's no room for him. Where does he play? We often have this. We have a starting 11. We have an established 11. And anytime you sign a player, or where does he fit in? Of course, that doesn't really tell the full story of A, that players get injured, and B, that you make substitutions. And I did feel that today I looked at it, I thought, okay, it's not all about Is Jesse Lingard booting Benrahma out of the team permanently? Is he booting Bowen out of the team permanently? Maybe it's just not about that. Maybe it's a case of where you have somebody, like Bowen, for example, who I didn't think was particularly productive, aside from his assist from the corner against Crystal Palace, but he worked very hard. Again, he didn't really offer much in this game against Liverpool. He wasn't on his own. I only use him as an example because it's possibly one of the positions that Jesse Lingard might look to play in. It was very, very apparent then why it would be advantageous to West Ham to have a player like Jesse Lingard in the squad on the bench, either coming off as a substitute or where we're in the position now where we are. Maybe for the next game against Aston Villa, Lingard starts. I don't think he will because he's not up to speed yet. His fitness is not going to be at a level with the others. But that's absolutely fine. But it does show why you need competition for places and the ability to freshen things up, which brings me back to Antonio, because it's transfer deadline day today, and Moyes alluded to the fact in his it was his interview after the match. The business is done. We're all done, he said. Okay, I can understand that, but if you're going to bring an attacking midfielder in as a backup to all the players that we just discussed, surely a striker is a good option. Surely let's just try and get somebody over the line in a transfer window on this final day. Because it wasn't working for Antonio. And if what we're saying is, if it's not working for Antonio, then our option is then to bring on Yarmolenko. Well, I just don't think that's good enough. Because again, I think it lacks pace. We saw the benefit of outright pace when Salah scored his goal. We also saw positioning and touch and just being absolutely clinical. But we saw someone with blistering pace. And as I've said before, I just think it completely changes the dynamic of how the team play if Antonio is then swapped in and Yarmolenko comes in. Now, I don't mind. If we don't sign a striker today, and I think we won't, because later on, myself, Gio, and anybody else that wants to join in, will be doing a transfer deadline day special Talk West Ham. I have a feeling we're going to be sat there for 3 hours wearing something yellow and not talking about any West Ham signings. And that's okay if Moyes is going to put faith in Odebeko. Because he's now been on the bench for the last 2 games running. Sandwiched in between that, he's featured for the under-23s and he scored twice and got an assist. If what we're doing is we're saying this guy is our backup striker and our reserve striker, then let's give him some time. Let's give him a go. Because I'm a little bit worried that we may well be looking to go through the rest of the season with just Yarmolenko being shoehorned into that position. I don't want him there. I'm not saying there's no space for Yarmolenko in this team. I'm sure he can, but let's be fair. Yarmolenko, by and large, is a West Ham substitute at the moment. Because of the purchase or loan agreement with Jesse Lingard, I would imagine his opportunities to get into that first team in his favoured position have diminished somewhat. But you have to give the kid a chance. If you don't give the kid a chance, talking about Odebeko here, then go and get a striker. The talk on Josh King has gone rather quiet. However, I know Jesse Lingard isn't everybody's favoured choice for us to bring in. I'm also aware that Josh King is not everybody's favoured choice. And neither of them are my first choices. But if we got to the end of the transfer window and actually we find ourselves in a position where we'd added Josh King and Jesse Lingard into the squad, you'd have to have said that's not been bad. We've probably done something that's quite useful to the team. I've got my feelings, which is I think Bournemouth and Josh King have both priced themselves out of the market, which is a bit of a shame because I do think he could have done a job. I think he can. I think Moyes needed to change tactics in the game against Liverpool. However, I do think had he have got to half-time and seen it wasn't working, and seen particularly Antonio wasn't working, he could have replaced him, got Josh King on it, and we still would have retained a sort of attacking threat. Because I am slightly worried about just the over-reliance on Antonio. Antonio, as I said, when Antonio plays well, we play well, but he has to be fit and he has to be firing. And he just didn't look fit in this one, which was really strange. Because he looks like he's been getting fitter and fitter. But it looks like he went back a notch on that one. He didn't seem to be running around as much as he did. Didn't seem to be imposing himself on the game. Maybe he just sort of lost interest because he was so isolated, and he was massively isolated up front on this one. He got a chance, of course. But I always find with Antonio, when he has too much time to think about the finish, you normally get a Rosette's job, or you get, this wasn't a Rosette, it was whatever, it was I don't know, a couple of foot wide or something like that. I feel when it's instinctive and he has no time to think, he can sort of contort his body, and did it against West Brom, didn't he? He can find a way to finish. There's not too much thought involved. Give him a little bit where he has to compose himself and get his body shape right and all that sort of thing. He suddenly looks like somebody that's not a conventional striker, and he generally doesn't do particularly well. How many times have you seen him cut in and try and really think about it, then decide to shoot with his left foot, and it basically, well, it doesn't just go over the goal, it goes over the stadium, and it's probably to be found somewhere in the Stratford Centre. I like Antonio, and my point here, I guess my finishing point is, I don't want to throw the baby out with a bathwater on this. I really don't. This is one game. It's an isolated game. And we very much can go ahead and go into the Aston Villa game with hope. And if we win that, then we're back in the mix. And when I say the mix, I don't really know what the mix is for. I think now we can probably look at it and think we were just not good enough to play a top four football, really. But we are good enough to be not only a top half team, but mixing it in the top half of the top. I guess the top half of the top half is the top five. Maybe I've got that slightly wrong. But we're a good team. We're a decent team. I think the regret is that we didn't show we were a good team in that game. Liverpool didn't get to see us at our best. Gio made a great comment. Nat Phillips has played well twice this season for Liverpool, and both times were against us. And I got a lot of respect for Moyes. I'm not making any bigger statement like we could do it. I don't even think we could do any better. I'm lucky to have him at West Ham. However, there did just seem to be, I got the impression, let's say, that we lacked any desire to really go for that, any ambition. I'm not saying Moyes didn't want to win. I'm not saying Moyes didn't want 3 points. No. But those players didn't run out that tunnel and start that game in the manner that I expected them to. They didn't seem to have a rousing speech ringing in their ears, which is just what I thought would happen. I said in the video on the morning of the match. I'm not telling David Moyes what he should say. I know David Moyes is going to be giving this instruction to the players. He didn't. Clearly he didn't. Because if he had given that instruction to them and they hadn't done it, he'd have got to half-time, he'd have given them a rollicking, they would have come out completely different. Didn't. We had to go 1-0 down before he changed things and decided to attack. That is a massive indication that the manager is then reacting to something he doesn't like. Well, he shouldn't have liked what he saw in the first half. But the one thing I do know is, and I hope this is the case, I don't want to put the kiss of death on it. Look, if I get it wrong, it ain't my bloody fault. I'm not sending the team out. If I'd have sent the team out, I wouldn't have sent them out like that against Liverpool. We do tend to bounce back from defeat pretty damn well under David Moyes. He'll be seething. Because and he'll be seething with the result. He'll be seething with the manner of the performance. And I think he'll probably be seething with a few of the players, because we did not see very many good performances there at all. I thought possibly only Dawson. But I do think he needs to look at himself a little bit. And I think he does. He's got the capacity. I've heard him say 2 or 3 times this season, I got that one wrong. Certainly Brighton, he said that. Newcastle, possibly. He said that wasn't a team that I recognised. Anyway, this was bad. This was a really, really bad performance. Had we have lost 3-0 and we'd have had a go, and we'd lost 3-0 to the Liverpool main team, with a 3 Musketeers up front and all the rest of it, I mean, it would have been easy to swallow. But to lose that way to that team, which features so many second-string players, without really giving it a go, I think it's a bit of a shame. And the fact that we scored the goal with Dawson near the end, so we should have been doing this at the start. Should have been part of the tactic. Should have been as many shots on target as we can. Get shots. Let's get some corners. Let's put them under pressure. We didn't do it. Not only did we not do it, we didn't even try to do it. And I think that's what I find annoying. But hey, look, onwards and upwards. We've got a couple of things to look forward to. I'm looking forward to Aston Villa more than I'm looking forward to the transfer window. I don't think anything will happen. But I just hope if we don't bring another player in, let's at least, if Antonio ain't working, let's at least give the youngster a chance.